Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. I'm your host, Jerry Snyder. In episode 183, I speak with Joni Davis. She is a fertility expert and founder of the vitamin company Beli. What we talk about is vitamins for prenatal care, vitamins for preconception, vitamins for pregnancy, vitamins for post-pregnancy. But we talk about vitamins also just in a general term of how do you look for vitamins that are good for you? How do you know that what you're taking is really good for you? How do you know it's being absorbed? But also some of the things that I learned in regards to vitamins for men for prenatal care, right? Like there is a segment of vitamins and a type of vitamins that men need to make sure that their sperm are of highest quality and that they have a better amount, like a better quantity of them. The vitamins that you consume matter when it comes to the quality and care of your reproductive organs. And so not just for women. And there's more too. We talk about like what's coming in the future as far as vitamin care and how much more there is to learn. So whether you are in those childbearing years or not, I know that you know somebody that is. And so this is a hugely important conversation because infertility is on the rise. And while vitamins is not necessarily the answer to solving infertility, it can definitely increase the levels of fertility among people of childbearing years. So super important conversation to have. And as both of us state in the conversation, that the quality of vitamins that you get, whether you are creating a baby in your womb or you're just living your life outside of those childbearing years, the quality of vitamins that you get impact the quality of life that you have with your body. So hugely important conversation to have, and more research needs to be done. But I think you're going to learn a lot from Joni in what she has to share. So thank you, Joni, for joining me with the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Thank you for having me here. It's so good. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
So one of the things when I came across Beli that struck me was the fertility tone with vitamins. And obviously, I think a lot of people that when they start thinking about getting pregnant, a lot of people know, okay, you need your prenatal vitamins, you need this, you need that. Why did you think that that's something that like, okay, we need to go into this and discover more and research more and be more focused on like truly what's there versus like there's already things on the market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. It's one I always love to talk about because we didn't set out to do, the fertility space, right?
Okay.
I set out as a mom, as a woman to create a better women's prenatal because at the time, and this was 2018, if you did a search on Amazon, like what are the top 10 selling women prenatal multivitamins, not one met current guidelines. And so really? I think this whole industry as a whole, right?
Wow.
It hadn't been innovated on. These formulas, a lot of them were 30 years old. And I think there's so much more we know now about nutrition, about our bodies, about our environment, about our lifestyle, that really it's like there was a big opportunity to kind of modernize and really look at what are the current guidelines and how can we better support that journey with these products. So that was the initial intent of Beli. So when we went out and we looked at the nutrients, right? And in women's prenatal, a really big one is choline.
Right.
Right. It's kind of new to the recommendations.
Yeah.
It's recommended in a lot. Like for pregnant women, it's 450 milligrams. In breastfeeding, it's 550. And we have Dr. Taylor Wallace on our medical board, who's he's kind of devoted some of his science to the majority of it to choline. Mm-hmm. Is that it's it rivals folate in how important it is for your embryo development. It's important for your brain development. It's important for all of us, right? But think about it, 450 milligrams. So
that's a lot.
There's just so this research is coming out. So when we looked at nutrients, we were like, okay, we look at folate and they talk about men's, fertility health. We looked at vitamin D and it's men's fertility health. We looked at CoQ10, it's men's fertility. We're like, wait, when you look at these nutrients, it's like, they're talking about sperm health. And at the time, I had no idea that there was anything that could be done on men's health side.
Right.
But since then, we're like, it really truly was an aha moment that, hey, it takes two to make a baby.
Right.
Sperm health is equal to, egg health in terms of, your ability to conceive. So there are nutrients that have been shown to support men's health when it comes to sperm. Sperm is generated on the daily. It takes 3 months to mature. And there are certain nutrients that have been shown to help support, help support optimal sperm counts, optimal sperm quality, which is just as important as quantity. And so that's when we came out with we call it a men's prenatal.
Yeah.
And that's really where this fertility story came into play. Because honestly, I didn't even know there was a fertility story, right? I think so much of us intermix the word fertility with infertility.
Right.
And fertility, by definition, is just our potential for actually producing a baby, right? And so infertility, right, is if it's taken longer than a certain amount of time and you want to, then you should go seek fertility care. We believe you should be seeking fertility care at the start of your journey, because we believe that your preconception health and being proactive about your preconception health is critical to your journey, whether you're thinking about it today, tomorrow, right? Or, or even having second children. So when we look at fertility, I'm really looking at your preconception health. Right. And there's a window, right, of preconception health that says, and here's the good news, modifiable lifestyle behaviors that we can make that can help improve our fertility. Right. All right. So it starts with diet, which includes supplementation, right? Because that's what dietary supplements are, supplementing your diet. It's exercise, it's your health, it's your weight, it's your, environment. So, toxins, it's heat, it's right. So there's a number of variables or modifiable behaviors that we can take today to help support our journey in any way, like whether you're doing it naturally or you're going through and you're in under the care of a fertility doctor or a clinic. A lot of them still recommend, you still take some supplements, get your diet healthy. Right. Don't go into saunas, make sure you're good with your environment and the products you're putting on your body. So that's, I know, sorry, I took a long way to get there. That's when we talk about fertility. So it wasn't like we set out to solve anything on that front, but it did open, it was mind blowing how much that we can talk about it and have the conversation around your health. And those modifiable behaviors that can help us on our journey, all together, probably in just your general wellness as well, right? So that's how we got started. So we have our men's prenatal, which is just a fancy way of saying it just helps men's health with some additional support and nutrients that have been shown to support your sperm health. Our women's prenatal is for all stages. And for post as well. And then we have protein. So we talk a lot about protein and the elevated needs your body has, right, for protein when you're going through your pregnancy journey. Right.
Well, and so you touched on something there that I definitely want to talk about, because I think it's something that's not talked about enough when it comes to fertility, is the decrease or the increase in infertility, the decrease in fertility among people of childbearing years. And I've heard stats that it's decreasing at a rate that everybody will need intervention, at least in the United States, within 20 or 30 years. Just going and just getting together and having a baby is going to be pretty much uncommon without some sort of intervention to help the process along. Which, 50, 7,500 years from ago, that was never the case. And so obviously, lifestyle changes is a big piece of that, because we all know that our health is decreasing in the U.S. And so those lifestyle changes, like you mentioned, but also making sure that we get the nutrients that we need. Right. And that's what you've basically boiled it down to is, and as you said, the old system is 30 years ago. Wasn't really giving us what we needed when it came to not just becoming pregnant, but having a healthy pregnancy. right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard that too. And I don't know. I don't know if some of that is scare tactics in terms
Could be,
of,
yeah.
or just, hey, people wake up and, start thinking about, taking control of your reproductive health. But there is something. I did sit on a panel with, she's Dr. Amy, who's the egg whisperer.
Yeah.
And she's really big on, really looking at, environmental toxins and the effect on DNA, the fragmentation, right? Which she believes is a big part of it, right? So I know people talk about sperm counts, but also just the effect our environment has on our, on sperm quality. So I think that's a big, big part of it. And then if you look at our food system, right? Yeah. I don't know about you. I'm not always the best eater. I'm pretty good considering the space I'm in, but when you look at how our food is grown and how it's processed and how it's transported, right? It's hard. It's hard to get all the nutrients. So do your best. Like, we are very much a food first company. And you should use, supplements to supplement your diet. But, when you are trying to go through the process of conception and growing a new little life, you have elevated nutrient needs that sometimes, your diet's just not going to support, right? So in the example I gave of choline earlier, for you to get 450 milligrams of choline, well, you'd be eating a lot of liver or those animal byproducts, but also you'd have to eat probably like 8-9 eggs a day, every day.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
So it's not, so it's not just about, it's are we deficient?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people look at vitamin D levels, right? A lot of people are very deficient.
Yeah.
And so in order to make sure our body has those nutrients, you look at, kind of a steady stream of food, and where you need to, again, talk to your doctor, supplement with different, but you're right. It's like, we need to wake up in society and say our food system is broken. We need to go back to really looking at whole foods and how they're grown. And again, it's what we can control. It's so much of this process is out of our control, but if we look at our food sources and the foods that we choose on the daily and how we choose to supplement our diets with nutrients, those make a difference. Like it really does. And so, in coming back to, kind of this whole notion of fertility or your ability, right, to produce, it is, are there certain nutrients or modifiable lifestyle choices I can make that will help me, over time.
Right. Well, and one of the things that, like, in researching for this and seeing how much emphasis in research and product development you've done on prenatals for men, as you've talked about, like, that was to me, that was like a, whoa, okay. I didn't realize that was, I mean, it makes total sense once you get into it and you go, oh yeah, well, duh, it does take a sperm and an egg. And so the sperm has to be just as healthy and prepared and all those things. And so how do you do that is through nutrition. And I think one of the things that a lot of people look at supplements and they think, okay, well, yeah, if you're going to be an athlete, you need to supplement because you're doing above and beyond what the normal person does from you're putting your body through all these things. But really, that's like pregnancy. You're putting your body through a ton of stuff. And to have a healthy pregnancy, you want to have the best quality you can have at the very beginning, right? Which means supplementing. And so it really does make sense for both people to be in that prenatal space with their body. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're asking your body to do a lot. You're asking your body to create a new little life, right? So for women, we get that. I think it's a pretty common proposition that women, I don't know any doctors. I'm sure there are a few. I don't want to speak for the whole community, but it's a generally accepted across all mediums that women who are trying to conceive and who are pregnant take a prenatal.
Right. Yep.
And where I will expand on that too is, this whole area of fertility, right? Or let's call it preconception care, right? It's kind of reproductive health.
Sure.
There's way more on that now. And I think that really, as you said earlier, it stems from the fact that there seems to be a rise in people seeking fertility care.
Right.
Right. And so, there's more education, there's more research, there's more and there's more thought given, and there's been more thought given to not just addressing what's happening on the women's side, but also what's happening on the men's side. So yes, when we came out with our men's prenatal, and people always say, well, you can't get pregnant. Why is it prenatal? I understand that.
Right.
But I wanted it to be something broader than fertility. I wanted it to be, we associate prenatal care with any, your care along that pregnancy journey, wellness, which includes preconception, which a lot of people call trimester 0. So it wasn't the first product out there, but it was the first one to really kind of modernize, or really, try to use our platform to also help people educate on the nutrients and their lifestyle and what you should be considering. Like, we've done a ton of articles on beware of your sports supplement. Like, you don't know if there's added nutrients in there that might be harming your fertility, right? Like testosterone, steroids. That's scary. We talk about exercise, like, extreme athletes. Actually, there's a correlation between that and a possible reduction in fertility or your overall ability to conceive. So, hair loss medications or medications in general, like if you are on a medication, talk to your doctor, because there is a chance and a correlation, right? So yes. So the idea of a men's prenatal, or just a men's wellness for, their journey and the path to pregnancy, was new. But I think if you look at it today, the majority of companies that come out with women's also have a men's. So it's becoming a more of a generally accepted. And if you look at the number of doctors and research and clinics that actually do recommend supplementation, this is starting to become more norm, which I think is super beneficial for everybody who's on this journey, or even thinking about this journey.
Right. Well, and it's not, and you touched on this, but I want to make sure the listeners here, this is not like vitamins and supplements that's going to improve your chances, but it's vitamins and supplements that are going to improve the quality once it actually happens and becomes a fetus and becomes a baby. Am I saying that correctly?
Well, yeah, but I mean, there are, again, the idea of boosting fertility is just means there's nutrients. It doesn't solve a infertility diagnosis, and it doesn't solve a anything that's been diagnosed. But in terms of natural fertility, it can increase your chances, just because being healthy and those lifestyle factors overall will help as well. So I don't want to confuse kind of anything that has to do with anybody who's been diagnosed with infertility. Right. But at a minimum, whether you're going through fertility treatments or you're on your own and thinking about it, that preconception care and that window that you have and being proactive with your reproductive health is, has the potential to be really beneficial down the road, just to your overall health as well.
Right. And you touched on this a little bit, but like those needs for the man in the situation, those needs basically don't change much, right? The vitamin supplement from a prenatal care, like once the baby's been conceived, like his needs don't change, but the woman's needs will change as far as what they need, right? Because they need certain vitamins in a prenatal situation, certain vitamins once they're pregnant, and then certain vitamins once the baby's born and they're breastfeeding and they're postpartum, right?
Yeah.
Is that been determined that it's like across the board, everybody gets the same thing? Or is that something that also can fluctuate per the person and how the pregnancy is and that kind of thing?
Well, I think it's generally accepted that, and there's been just super solid recommendations of a prenatal, right? So each trimester does require a little bit more and a little bit less of what's in a prenatal. But in general, there's usually one prenatal that goes across, all 4 trimesters. I think that's going to evolve a lot in terms of, like, for example, in trimester 1, where maybe you are, you're starting to grow your new little one and you're nauseous, right? Right. Like your hormones are all like screaming at you. And sometimes like more B6, right, will help with some of those, or can have the potential to help with some of those, nausea. And if you build it up prior to getting pregnant, then there's studies that say it could help down the road, right?
Okay. Right.
With nausea. So again, whatever works for you. But I think for right now, in terms of what's recommended by the big standards bodies in terms of a prenatal, it's pretty standard across all trimesters. Now, what's interesting, and I don't think a lot has been done, and I think a lot more could be done, is that postnatal phase. And I think generally there's a tendency once you have the baby, right? All focus is on the baby. And really, there's a great book called it's postnatal. It's about postnatal depletion. And in it, he says that it takes typically 10 years for a woman's body to recover from having a baby.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So, and there is something called postnatal depletion, which is just your nutrients. Once you've had the baby, right? You're breastfeeding, then really choline, you want enough choline that goes through your breast milk if you choose to breastfeed. So there's some differences and some nuances for each trimester, especially and I always, we always say, hey, don't forget about this fourth trimester once you've had the baby, because nutrient depletion is real. And there's certain nutrients that can really help support your recovery and healthy breastfeeding if that's what you so choose to do. So yes, I think in general, there's a one prenatal that kind of those recommendations go across all four. But, I think I can see at some point, really looking at, what your body needs per trimester. But in general, a good prenatal should cover your needs across every trimester.
So and this may not be something, and this may be something that is like, like you said, like needs to be researched. But is that nutrient depletion, is that something that is increasing the levels of postpartum depression, or like, because we all know that obviously nutrients in your deficiencies in different ones can have effect on your capacity, as far as your brain capacity, your mind, and how your body works in all the different ways. So has that shown to be an effect, or is that something that's like hasn't even been touched yet as far as research?
It has. And I've seen studies that nutrient depletion, right, does cause what you'd consider the baby blues, right? Of course, there's a spectrum that women go through in terms of what postpartum depression from baby blues to having, something super severe does. But there is a growing number of research that says, nutrient depletion can cause some mood disturbances. And yes, and you should really look into addressing that through nutrients, through talking to your doctor, because it is real. So I actually think that way more research could be done in that area to help. But I think there has been a general correlation between nutrients and mood, and your mood. So I think there could be more done there, but I definitely think that it's showing some promise that it needs to be studied further.
No, I can definitely see the link there. And so if let's say that you're somebody who is like, you've got I would say the more traditional track of, whether you get married or not, but you're like, okay, I want to have kids. I want to da-da-da. Versus the person who is like, you know what? I don't want to have kids. I just want to live my life and just be, the favorite aunt or whatever in a situation. Do those two women need the same vitamins?
That's a really, really great question. A lot of the same vitamins that are in prenatals are in general women's, but of course, when you're taking a prenatal, it's heightened, right? You're going to have extra nutrients. So probably not, right? If you, so you want to find something that kind of matches what your wellness goals are. And you find a multivitamin for that. When you're talking about men's prenatals or you're talking about women's prenatals, usually the doses are just different to match kind of what your body and what science is telling us and recommendations are that you need. I take the women's prenatal and I'm done having kids, but I don't take all three, right? So I don't recommend that. I recommend that every woman really look at what your wellness goals are and, and find a vitamin or just, whatever supplements, right? Because it's a supplement to your food, right? Is going to support what your body needs. But I do firmly believe that, really looking at how nutrients, drive just different functions in our body, right? As I mentioned earlier, like a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D. Like I personally, am not diagnosed as anemic, but I take iron because I really feel like it supports my energy levels. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of research out there. I think everybody just needs to say, what are my, my wellness goals, and then really work with your medical provider or your dietitian to make sure you're getting enough and make sure you're testing those levels, because, a deficiency or just lower rates of vitamin D can cause so many issues in your body. And I don't think honestly, as a society, we do enough to really go, do I have all the nutrients I need to support my body? Right. And then, if you look at it too, I think what was really big in the research that we had when we started out to do this is the quality, right? There is a difference in taking different forms, right, of nutrients. So sometimes people pick up a bottle and go, oh, checks all the boxes. And you'll just go, well, wait, there's nutrients in there that your body can absorb better, which is called being bioavailable, right? It's like, how well is your body able to absorb that? There's different forms of iron, for example, that get digested in a different way. So they don't, I think there was a big, iron makes me sick. Okay. Well, there's different forms that can help you digest it in a better way. But I also think there's an industry movement to really put better nutrients. If we're going to have to supplement it with stuff is good for you. And as much scrutiny as we now put into what we put on our bodies, like, is this lotion good for me? Is this sunscreen good for me? You need to be as thoughtful about what you put in your body. Can you imagine you're putting something in your body, you think it's doing you good, and you look at it and maybe it's not the best form. So either it's going to exit your body quite rapidly, or, your cell's going to go, I don't know what this is. And it's going to try and grab it. Right. So again, if you do choose to or even like that even extends to if you choose organic food or you choose whole foods, right? All of that matters. So it's not just that you're taking something, but really, really scrutinize the form that you're taking it in as well, and making sure that your body can actually absorb it.
Right. Well, and so that leads me to a great question and I was told this by a pharmacist at my local grocery store several years ago, because I was looking at, generic vitamins, and I was just looking at going, okay, which one do I want? And basically it was because, one had 90 pills and the other had 60 pills. I'm trying to do the math in my head, like which one. And he looked at me and he was like, are you trying to figure, like, he goes, if it's generic, they basically all come from the same plant. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, there's a plant in New Jersey that makes all the generic vitamins basically. And I was like, that can't be right. But it leads me to a question of like generic versus a name brand. And like you were talking about the quality, like how do we know just looking at it on the label? Because they're not going to necessarily label it like, oh, this is poor quality, vitamin D. Like, is there a way that we can tell that without going into our phone and going to Google and going to research and going like, where are they getting this from?
Great question, because this was all part of our journey when we came up with our nutrients as well. Generic doesn't mean bad. Mm-hmm. It's like taking, I'm going to take, Advil, or I'm going to take my grocery store brand of acetaminophen. Probably the same, right? You go to Costco and you're like, they kind of white labeled it. So it's probably the exact same product. So it's not necessarily saying it's bad. Yeah. But the choices we made, right? We chose to use methylated B vitamins, right? So folate versus folic acid. And folic acid is just the synthetic form of folate. Right. And then we all know that a lot of people, I think it's over 60% of the population, has a genetic mutation where they can't absorb folic acid, right? So we put methylated B vitamins in our, right? So I think that's one thing to look at. If it's folic acid or folate, everybody has their school of thought. We believe that methylated vitamins have a better chance of your body absorbing them. Okay. Yeah.
No, and I've seen the research a lot of people, on that too.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. And see, a lot of people still go, well, folic acid's my thing, but that's kind of the balance that we looked at when we put nutrients in our vitamins. Another one, we use a vegan D3. We like the idea of a vegan D3 because if you know where D comes from, it's animal skin.
Right.
Right. It's oil from,
Yep.
And so we're like, well, we really feel like, to support kind of what we felt was a healthier journey, we use a vegan D3 and we use a branded version. It's called VitaShine.
Okay.
A lot of studies behind it, really good for you.
Yeah.
Now here's what's interesting. Like when we started with choline, we did use a generic, only because there wasn't really any difference. It was all the same thing.
Right.
But now we do use a branded, called VitaCholine. A lot of studies behind it. I don't know if there's a difference per se between, the branded and the generic, but because of the way they process it, it enabled us to go from 4 capsules down to 3.
Oh, okay.
Right. So there's different considerations you look at.
Right.
What I found, which I thought was super interesting, is 99% of the vitamin C in the world is manufactured in China.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Good or bad, right or wrong.
Yeah.
We just were like, we're not sure that we can really count on the quality standards of a country that far away who may not, we don't know or really have that substantiated. So if you look at a lot of supplement companies today, they'll say, we want you to really understand where, not just that we have the vitamin or the nutrient or the antioxidant or whatever, but where it came from.
Right.
So I guess short answer to that is it's not necessarily bad that it's generic. We take it on a case by case basis, but one of our core fundamentals is what do we think is going to be best absorbed, and is the healthiest for you and your body. So and so you need to look at that on your journey and go, okay, do I care about vegan? Do I care about non-GMO? Do I care about, where those actual nutrients came from? Do I care about where it was manufactured? Do I care about, yes. Do I care about third-party testing? Right. So we chose we third-party test our vitamins.
Yeah.
Right. So all of those are really just, points of consideration when you're choosing to supplement, that we feel are important as well.
Yeah. Well, and that absorption piece is really the biggest, factor in that, because I've got a family member who has asked me, like what's wrong, because my doctor says I'm having all these symptoms that are from being B deficient. But when they test me, my B and my blood level's fine. And I'm like, well, but it's in the blood, but is it getting absorbed? Like there's a piece there that like, it's not getting into the cells. So your cells aren't showing, and so I don't know where that's coming from for her, like what she's taking, where the supplement's coming from. But that just leads me to go, well, something's off, because you can take the proper amount, but if it doesn't get to where it needs to go, then it's like going to the gas station and going, I got to fill up my tank with 10 gallons of gas, and pouring 10 gallons on the ground and getting back in the car and going, well, I bought 10 gallons of gas. Why isn't it getting me where I need to go?
Yep.
So that can be frustrating, because doctors can say, like, what are you taking? And you tell them what you're taking, and then they go, well, you should be fine.
Right. And that goes to another like interesting question, right? Is how much nutritional science training should the, medical community go through? And from my understanding, it's not a whole lot. There are some that are way better than others. But I think in general, just the whole school of, how we can think about nutrients in our body and the effects it has, I think should be definitely an integral part of anybody's wellness journey. I think our medical system, right, is so inclined to treat a problem that we don't, a lot of times, like I would love, and I'm a huge advocate for, what can we do to get ahead of it? How can we be proactive, right? But your point is right. I hear that, we hear that all the time. But we also hear, people go into their doctors and they'll go, I'm taking this prenatal, and they'll go, yep, check the boxes and off you go, right? And we're like, well, we think you should scrutinize that just a little bit more, right? Yeah. And so we're definitely of the camp of, just educating and helping people understand who to go to, who to see, and what really matters here. But I think you're right. I mean, that's common that we hear all the time. Like I just gave you my example of iron. Like they go, nope, you're not anemic. I'm like, well, it works for me. Right. And so, everybody has to be their own. If we've learned anything in this world, you have to be your own advocate on your health and wellness journey. Definitely. And you go and you search and you talk to people and you go to your doctors. And it's just it reminds me of like when we were formulating our vitamins, I had 9 different disciplines that gave me feedback into our formulas.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's
9.
cool. That's cool.
So, and everybody had a different point of view and everybody else had, research, but it was so valuable, I think, when you kind of look at it. And so when you're going through your wellness journey, it's like, it may not be one person, but there's like a community of people you could also go to too, to help, kind of figure out how to meet your goals. Right.
Well, and I think that's important because so many people get stuck in just one, like, okay, nope, this person says, I'm going to trust them and think it's right and go. And, but there's so many other disciplines out there when it comes to, especially solving problems that are going on in the body. But when it comes to prevention, there's so many disciplines out there that can help with different areas and aspects. And you take pieces from each one and develop the plan for you. Right. And that's really what works best is like, if you try and go to it from a cookie cutter standpoint, you're likely going to run into something that's not going to be exactly the way it should be for you. And I think vitamins is something that's vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, that's all something that like it's getting a lot more publicity now, I think, from the standpoint, not just of, in the 70s, 80s, everybody knew, okay, you take a multivitamin, it's but like you said, now it's getting more scrutiny as to like, what's in it? Why is it going to benefit me? Like, what is this the right one from the standpoint of the formula matches what I need, not just it's what was created for the general public.
Yeah, exactly. I think at some point, I don't even know when in the future, right? We'll get to the point where, we can measure what we need for our own personal journeys. We're not there, but gosh, wouldn't that be fabulous if we were? But, hopefully in this whole heightened area of really looking at what we need and just the rise of fertility challenges and the rise of education on our reproductive health and the rise of, just deficiencies that we're seeing across the board. There are some interesting studies even coming out. I mentioned Dr. Taylor Wallace that aren't public and that he's working on is that, there could be a gene that prohibits or inhibits your body's ability to process choline. Right. Oh, wow. So, more studies are needed, but that's the kind of stuff we're looking at. So I wouldn't assume you take a vitamin and you're good to go. Right. It's that you need to listen to your body, talk to your doctors, make sure you're eating good foods, make sure you're getting enough exercise, right? Kind of all that. Yep. Right. So it's kind of a more holistic approach than just I've got a problem and I need a solution type approach.
Well, and you sort of mentioned this too with the fact that you said you take an iron, like it's okay to say, okay, I'm going to take this multi because it's got everything I need in it, but I'm going to also take this individual one because I know I need extra of this versus like, I'm just going to double up on the multi all the time. Like, like it's okay. It's okay to do that. Like just the multi and then, okay, I need the extra B vitamin, the extra D vitamin and just add that one to it.
Well, again, you also don't want to get too much of something. Like there's some where it's fine if you get a lot. Like I know people that take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. Right. And that's because they are deficient and that's, and they're taking IVs. Right. And that's something that they worked out with their doctor. Yeah. I don't think just doubling up on multivitamins or taking, huge amounts of extra stuff, because there could be vitamins that are detrimental. We chose not to put vitamin A in our prenatal. So yes, vitamin A is recommended for pregnancy, but you know what? It's actually pretty easily absorbed from your diet. Yeah. And if you get too much, it's been shown it could cause issues in early pregnancy. So not saying it will, but just saying that we chose not to put it in there because chances are you're getting enough just from your everyday diet. Yeah. Okay. So I don't recommend just kind of doubling up on everything. If it's something that, you like, you talk to your doctor about and saying, okay, if I'm vitamin D deficient, or I'm, not absorbing folic acid or whatever it may be, that's just the considerations, the considerations you need to know in order to find out the best journey for you.
Right. And that could be something that's just a temporary thing too.
Oh, for sure.
Like the deficiency is not necessarily like if you get labeled, quote unquote, vitamin D deficient, you're not that for the rest of your life. It just means you're in a time frame where you didn't get enough and you went down, and now you've got to build it back up to where it's like, okay, now I can live again without having to double up on vitamin D or take a higher dose of, supplementation wise.
Oh, for sure. Like hormone fluctuations, right? I mean, it's just, it is. And so you're listening to your body, but people with celiac, right? Can't process, right? So again, it's a spectrum, right? It's a spectrum. There's no one size fits all when it comes to this industry or to anybody's health. But again, I'm a huge proponent of taking control of your health as much as you can, educating yourself, right? And on the pregnancy journey, or on the preconception health, or on your reproductive side, right? Or your postnatal health, that's where your needs are really elevated, right? That's where your needs are elevated. And so that's where kind of that higher level of nutrients come in. And so that's the journey we're on here at Beli.
Well, and I applaud you for that, because that's one of the biggest, like, when you look at a human's health over a lifespan, like that's when they're developing the most. That's when they've got the most going on. And so it's like I think anybody would want the highest quality going into the very beginning, whether it's a human or any process. Like you want the highest quality going in the beginning, because that's going to give you the best quality in the end. And so that you've taken that challenge on, and are helping people understand what they need on both sides of it, which was new to me, like on the man side and the woman side. Like, I think that's great and very beneficial, and I'm glad to be able to help you get the word out. So tell us how we can find Beli, how can we follow, like for those out there that are in that window of time where they're not just thinking about like, maybe I'll have kids in the next year or 2 years, but if they are in that window, they need to be thinking prenatal care for their body.
For sure. So you can find us online at belibaby.com. It's BELIBABY.com, and go check out our blogs. Like we really do try to come out with a lot of articles, and articles from the medical professionals we work with, really to help, educate you on your journey and just considerations. But you're right. I think our reproductive care, our preconception care, our fertility health, right? All those words are used interchangeably. It's a really empowering part of our overall health. And the more work you do to nourish it today, the better off you'll be down the road. And so that, come to Beli, look, you can sign up for our newsletter if you want. If not, just peruse our blogs. But, it is part of a journey we do to discover kind of what's best for us. And our area happens to be that preconception, fertility, pregnancy, right? And then we'd love to do way more on that postnatal side as well.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome what you're doing.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And you can tell you're passionate about it. Like you can tell that you're somebody who is in it for the right reasons, of like wanting to help people get the most out of their reproductive health and out of their pregnancies and really out of life, because that's where it all comes from. It's the relationships that we have as we grow our families.
Thank you. Thank you. I am passionate about it. Thank you. But thank you to you, because I think having these conversations only helps, right? It only helps everybody as they try to sort through how to live a healthy life. And so, to the extent that we can help, love to be here. I love talking about this. This is, very passionate, project of mine, but thank you so much for you and all that you do, and for bringing this to everybody's attention. Just a great conversation.
Yep. Thank you so much.